Get my thing on the screen here. Are we recording? Good evening, everybody, from Gustavus City Hall. Welcome to those of you following us on Zoom. This is our special work session on the budget, and the whole purpose is to go through our budget with our treasurer, give the council an opportunity to understand what's in the budget and ask questions and make any suggestions and so forth. Generally understand it. There'll be a public meeting coming up soon, in March, this 17th, 16th, 15th, March 15th, town hall on the budget, which will give opportunity for the public to ask questions and make comments and so forth as we continue to prepare it. This is the operating budget for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st. So we always start in February to put the budget together, and our treasurer has been working with the staff of the various departments to understand what their needs are. He's looked carefully at revenues compared to what we've been receiving this year to get a feeling for what the revenue picture, how it's been this year, and an idea of what we might be able to conservatively expect for next year. So he's put together a budget, and I've worked with him to edit some things here and there. We have a budget at this point that balances actually with a small surplus. And I had asked the treasurer to help me develop a budget that we balance with very little consideration of draw from unused expenses from previous years. Now, what we did decide to do, though, we had some, there were some expenses in this year's budget, well, like the planned single audit that we thought we would do this year, and now we expect to do next year, and that was like $35,000 that we know we are not spending this year. And so we moved, so we are confident in considering that as carryover from this year to next year. And there are a couple of other areas where that Ben can highlight when he gets into the revenues. But so we end up with known carryovers, or fairly certain carryovers for next year. Oh, one other key one is the emergency funding that we put in the budget last year as an item. We put $50,000, I think it is, into the budget with the idea that if we had a big emergency here, we could immediately draw out of that account to make repairs or do whatever response we needed to do, such as a big flood or a huge windstorm that damaged city facilities. We would have a budget line in the budget that could be used immediately, and we wouldn't have to be transferring more money for it, take the time to do that, or draw from other funding such as road maintenance that would detract from our ability to use that. So we have that in the budget with the idea that we would roll it over each year if we didn't use it. And we haven't used it so far this year. It's highly unlikely that we will. So that's another item that is in our carryover. We're showing as carryover for next year. And those carryover funds are essentially money that we already have in the bank. We're not betting on income to cover those. We already have the income. We had it before we put it into the budget this last year. So those carryover items are as good as money in the bank already. They are money in the bank already. So with that, with those kinds of considerations, I'll turn it over to Ben, and he'll take us through this budget. this is a very informal session, so council members should feel be ready and able to just raise any questions at any point, and we'll get to them. So Ben, can you take it from here? Lead us through it?
Thank you, Mike. First, I'd like to say that I sent out some documents on Friday for the council to look over, the mayor's budget, as well as some of the documents that I used to compile that information. And I sent those out expecting to use those documents to run this meeting tonight. But I was mistaken when I did that. And so anyone who wants to follow along on their computer as far as council members goes, or employees, department heads, the documents I sent out today are the documents that we'll be using. The numbers are almost identical. There was a few changes to payroll category that wasn't being formulated properly, and health insurance issue that I had to adjust. But so either way, the numbers are the same, but if you want to follow along with, you'll need to use the documents that I sent today, not the documents that I sent on Friday. And so with that, it also changes the format compared to how I explained I was going to run the meeting on Friday to today. So what you see on the screen is an overview of the entire budget. As I scroll down, it will be. And at the top, you have the departments. And on the left, you have the income or expense category. And on the right, you have the totals. And so the way that Phoebe explained that I should do it is just go line for line. The department heads should all be available to answer any questions. I will try to answer your questions, but some may be more specific and I may not have the answers. So we'll just start off, with how did we come up with these numbers, and why are they there? So with the first category is business license fees. I did the math today, and $3,500 is 140 business licenses. That would be a low amount. I've tried to budget things conservatively based on previous years, and so $3,500 seemed like a good low amount. 140 businesses. I don't think we'll have any problem getting there based on where we're at from where we're at in this fiscal year. So pretty self-explanatory. The donations, the library receives donations throughout the year. They're the only department that does receive donations that they keep in the budget. The fire department also receives donations, but they have a separate group that maintains that money, fundraising and donations for the fire department. That's how that money is dealt with. It doesn't come in through the city's coffers. On to income for the community chest. Paul is responsible for giving me the numbers. Again, he based these numbers on prior years sales, and he felt confident that the community chest could bring in $13,500 in the next fiscal year. And so that's the number that we plugged in there. The landfill fees, if you're comparing this to last year's budget, you'll see that last year they budgeted $90,450 for landfill fees and sales. And currently we're at about 59,000. And so Paul thought that when Eduarda and Tom came up with the budget last year, and I'm sure with Paul's help, that they budgeted high for 90,000. So this year we dropped that back down to 75,000, which seems to be on par with where we're at and where based on what we have and based on previous years revenue from the landfill. The recyclable material sales looks like we budgeted the same. One thing that I've noticed just in the few months that I've been doing this is that because of the cost of fuel and inflation, the amount of money that we're receiving for the recyclable materials that we send out of Gustavus is not, we actually paid to send some stuff out rather than making money off of it. So it's not a given that recyclable materials are gonna make us a lot of money. So we kept that low at $3,600. Moving down, I won't do the total DRC income, the totals for all the columns, having gone through the amounts. If we need to explain that, I can, but anyways, moving on. To federal revenue, I did add these ARPA funds back in. They were the local government lost revenue grant that we received in 2021. And for some reason, we didn't use those funds then. And so we moved them forward into this fiscal year. And I was trying to use them all up so that I didn't have to report on it anymore. But it made more sense after we started looking at the numbers, that rather than using that pot of money up, that we move it forward. And so the exact amount that we have left over is $35,987.92. And so we move that forward. That money can be used for specific purposes like fire department salary, safety supplies, and road maintenance. And so it won't be hard to use that money up in FY24. It can be used for the fire chief's salary, or fire department salary, safety supplies, things for the ambulance, or etc., stuff involving safety, and road maintenance. The National Forest receipts, we budgeted a little less than we received last year. Again, just trying to be conservative and what we're going to be making. Last year we budgeted 50,000. We still haven't received that money yet. It's the last of the federal revenue that we receive each year, and so we don't know yet what we're going to get for this current fiscal year. So it was hard to guess at what we'll get for next fiscal year. So we budgeted 45,000, a little lower than last year. That money is also encumbered. That can only be used for road maintenance. Payment in lieu of taxes. Last year, we budgeted $130,512.17, and that's exactly what we got. And so looking on DCRA's website, talking to Phoebe, and looking back through past years, it seems like that is pretty consistent. And so we just went ahead and put in 130,000 for this year as well. Still in income, the fire department, ambulance billing. Ambulance billing is a little bit of a difficult one. That means that people had to go somewhere in our ambulance. So we didn't want to make that amount too much, in hopes that people won't need our ambulance as much. But $9,000 seemed like a good, safe number that the fire chief agreed on. And so that's what we put in there. The ASP, that is the ambulance subscription service. That's the $10 or $25 that we receive from community members who subscribe to our ambulance subscription service. And if you need information on what that is, please contact Sol and he will talk you through it. The training from the fire department, Sol has become a CPR instructor, and so he is putting on CPR courses. I believe he's charging $10 per person currently. Oh, okay, $20. And so we put in $150, hoping that some people will want to come out and learn how to save their friends if they find them not breathing. Gravel pit sales I can't remember the year. I should have wrote it down off the top of my head. A few years ago, we increased the cost of gravel from our gravel pits to the contractors who extracted. I believe it was $2 per cubic yard, and we increased it to $6 per cubic yard. And so based on the amount of gravel that the contractors thought they might take out of the gravel pits this year, and this current fiscal year's revenue from the gravel pit sales, we thought that 40,000 was a good conservative number. Last year, they budgeted 27,000. We're currently at 45,000. We still have the rest of this quarter and the following quarter. And we don't expect to make much in this quarter, but we will make money in the following quarter. So we thought that 40,000 was a good safe estimate for that. Lease income, $15,000. There's a few parcels of land or buildings that we lease, including we'll be leasing the old post office, the future bike shop, I believe. So we raised the lease amount from last year. They budgeted $13,753. We raised that to $15,000, assuming that we would make more than the $1,200 leasing the building to leasing the old post office. The other leases, the money, unless we choose to raise the cost, that money is set, and we will be getting that same exact amount.
And
Yes.
what are the other parcels that are leased?
Mike, could you?
So they're the leases for the telecom towers.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's all that I can think of is they're all down there by the old post office area.
I had wondered the same, so thanks for that.
Okay, so moving on to library income. The library income, the $500 there is from T-shirt sales and no, that's fundraising. I'm sorry. 1 second.
You have a librarian here.
Yes, I'm sorry, Leanne, can you? I didn't say it into the mic. Okay, great. Jesse, would you mind telling us what the library income is? I'm sorry that I forgot.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Are you able to hear me?
We are.
Awesome. So that $500 and it comes from an average. And so I looked at the money that we deposited in fiscal year 22 for donations and then for fundraising. And the fundraising comes from a number of things. And I think that's the $500 there. Comes from t-shirt sales, from book sales. We have tote bags that we sell. We had a book swap in December, stuff like that. So anything that people are giving us money for a thing that we are selling to raise money.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. And I remember also you said copies and faxes, other services you provide?
No, actually, the copies and faxes and library card fees are considered library income. And so we don't deposit that as fundraised money. And so we have separate categories for fundraised money. We have the income, which is faxes, library cards, copies. And then we have donations, which are, exactly that. People give us money for the library. And then fundraising, which is us selling something to raise money. And so that $500 comes from the amount that we deposited in fiscal year 22 for fundraising. And fiscal year 23 looks to be about the same. Just looking at the amounts, I imagine by the end of the fiscal year, we'll have raised about $500.
Okay, I think that maybe we're confusing the two things. We're currently on library income, not fundraised and donated. I
Oh,
think maybe we
oh,
put
I'm
500
sorry.
for both. That's okay. You can
Yeah.
explain both. So when we get to the other
Yeah.
one, we'll know what that one's for.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
income is faxes, copies, and library card fees.
And for anyone who doesn't know, because I had to ask too, the library card fees are for seasonal visitors. I was like, I don't remember paying for my library card. So
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. So moving down into marine facilities, I put these numbers in. Last year, they just put in a whole number for the marine facilities income, $19,200. I based the numbers this year on actual usage. So the $2,000 for facility usage fees, that is based on landing craft landings in Gustavus. Every time a landing craft lands in Gustavus, they pay us $100. And this $2,000 is an average based on how many times landing crafts land in Gustavus. The commercial vessel registration, $15,000. We charge $500 per commercial vessel, and we currently have 30 commercial vessels working in Gustavus. So that was pretty easy to do. The private vessel registration of $5,000, $60 per vessel. Some reason I'm having problems doing the math in my head, but that was based on low average of private vessel registrations over the last 5 years. And the storage area fee, the storage area is full, and $1,700 is the amount that we make when the storage area is full. So those were all pretty simple, easy to come up with. And I think that the 23,700 is a more accurate reflection of how much we'll be making than the 19,200 that we had last year. So I raised that. Now on to state revenue, the community.
sorry.
Oh, no, that's
Is
okay. I'm
it
sorry.
okay to interrupt
Yes,
you?
definitely. That's the idea.
Something about the commercial vehicle registration. It looks like it's gone from 2,000 for, when do I say it? Which one is it? The commercial vehicle registration has gone upward from like 3,000 to 10,000, 15,000. Are we expecting more commercial vehicles to register, or are those increased fees? I'm sorry if you said that and I missed it.
The commercial vessels, right? So
Commercial.
yeah,
vessel.
yeah. Okay. So the commercial vessels, the way that they were budgeting for it was inconsistent. We have 30 commercial vessels that work out of Gustavus. And so that's how many I budgeted for, because that's how many that we have. And so that's unless somebody decides not to continue doing business, we don't have more room. So it would be hard for us to get more commercial vessels down there. And the people who are currently doing it, this is how many vessels they have. So that's what I based it on, was the actual number of commercial vessels that we have working in Gustavus in the summer.
Okay, so the budgeting process in the last year or two was a little different.
Well, yes. So last year they didn't actually put a number for commercial vessels separate from private vessels or storage area. They just put a number. They said $19,300, and that was how much they budgeted for marine facilities income. I just broke it out.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Pardon the interruption. I have somebody on Zoom that can't hear very well. So if you can all speak a little bit louder and closer to your microphone, that might be helpful. Thanks.
Okay. Try to get mine closer to myself. I hope you can hear me. Okay, so anyways, going back to the state revenue, the community assistance program. Last year, they budgeted $90,577.16. And it looks like they got exactly that much. I budgeted for 80,000 because we can't, because the current estimate is that we will make 75,000. According to DCRA's website, their estimate is that we'll be receiving 75,000. And when I went back through the last 5 years, their estimate was always $5,000 to $10,000 lower than what we actually got. So rather than going with the 90,000 like they did last year, I went with 80,000 because it seemed like a safe number based on the 5-year average from how they're paying out. Shared fisheries business. And last year they budgeted $896 and we received $484. And that is based on population, if I remember correctly. No. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it's not based on population, but it is not a number that is going up. It's not flying up. So we tried to keep it low. And now that I'm looking at what we brought in compared to what I put there, maybe we should have even gone a little lower, but
It's always been somewhere around $600 or
Okay.
so.
Well, there you go.
Close to it.
thank you, Mike. Okay. So now to the city's tax income. So for the city's retail tax income, we put in $415,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. Last year, they budgeted 400,000. And the reason that we increased it by 15,000 is because currently we're sitting at $384,442. We still have the rest of this quarter and we have the following quarter to go on. And so with the price of things like fuel going up, raises the price of things like food and transportation and your lodging and your boat rides and everything else that you do here. So it seemed safe to believe that we would easily make $415,000 based on this current fiscal year's revenue stream. So Mike and I went over this on Friday a few different ways, trying to decide how comfortable we felt with raising it from the previous fiscal year. And we were confident that $15,000 wasn't so much that we wouldn't do it. And we felt comfortable putting that amount in. So that is the number that we put in.
Yeah, if I can comment on that, I think that your guys' math is probably fine. Just running a quick $400,000 against or increased by the 5.4% inflation they calculated would put us at 421,000. So I
Okay.
fully support based on just that simple metric.
Thank you, Brian. Janine, were you about to say something? Turn on your mic if you are. Oh, okay. Okay. So moving on to remote sellers retail tax. So last year they budgeted $35,000 for remote sellers retail tax, and we're currently at 46,000. We have 5 more payments that we'll receive in this fiscal year, and they're averaging about $4,000. And so we felt comfortable thinking that this year we would probably bring in closer to 66,000 than 35,000. And so we raised the remote sellers retail tax to 56,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. This pot of money is coming from the state. The state has set up an agency that is going out and finding businesses that are doing business outside their community and other small communities around Alaska, and they are collecting taxes for us and then remitting that to us. And in the beginning, it was just the biggest companies like Amazon. Now we get our money straight from Amazon. We don't get it from the remote sellers folks anymore. But even then, this is a pot of money that is going to continue to increase as long as they're out there finding more people to collect sales tax from. And as long as people living here continue to shop online, this pot of money is going to continue. I mean, there will be a place where it'll level out, but yes, Kyle?
Yeah, from what I understand about that, I think that's a pretty safe estimate there, because when I was at AML last year, I was talking with those folks, and he's exactly right. You know, they were originally targeting the big companies like Amazon, Target, Walmart, etc. And now they're continuing to find like more and more businesses, all these little mom and pop shops that are doing business remotely. And so that list is just going to keep growing until it eventually stabilizes out. But for the most part, they're just going to keep finding all these businesses, and that's going to keep increasing. So I think that's a safe estimate that
Yeah.
especially in the next couple of years, it's going to be huge.
Right. Yep. And I'm getting phone calls from small mom and pop places asking, should they just fill out a business license and just remit their taxes straight to us? And I give them the option, you can do it however you want. But if you're talking about $20 over the course of the year, maybe it's best to just give it to the last, whatever the remote sellers people, and let them deal with the headache of the whole thing. But I have been in contact. I talked with them quite a bit at AML this year, and I've been in contact with them since I've been back on different issues, and they've been very confident in their ability to just keep finding us more bits of money. So again, I thought 56 was a conservative estimate, and I think that we'll easily make that.
If I can chime in, just a question out of curiosity on this. How long has the remote seller's tax been in place? So long, like this is a relatively new thing, right?
And I'd say it's 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
And it started out, first year, I think we got less than 20,000 or
Okay.
pretty low, but it's been rising steeply.
Yeah, this is something I deal with in my profession. I mean, I help businesses set up the automated systems to make sure that where they have a tax nexus, they are remitting the appropriate amount of taxes. So I'm familiar with it and see more and more shops going on board with it, and a lot of automated systems that just take care of it for them and remit it to the state, and they don't have to worry about it if they have a tax nexus in the place where. So mostly just curious to see how young this thing was. But yeah, I think your estimate is conservative, and likewise probably going to continue to see that grow, especially, it seems like eventually we get to a place where the growth in this is going to reach parity with just our local sales that happen here in town.
Right.
So, but to clarify, when you said that like Amazon pays directly, so does that get put into the remote sellers retail, or does that go into the retail tax
It
income?
goes into the retail tax income.
Okay, thanks.
So the next
Ben?
one is yes.
Hey, it's Kathy.
Yes.
I just was
Hi,
gonna,
Kathy.
hi, I was just gonna clarify a couple of things on the cap.
Okay.
So there's a couple of reasons why, it starts low and then maybe goes higher later. And last year in particular, it had to do with them not having the more current census update. And so when we submitted the new numbers, we were actually awarded a little bit more, I believe. And the other part of that is it's kind of like they put in the cap in the budget, and then the governor takes it out or reduces it. And then it's like a negotiation tool throughout the entire budget process at the legislature. So you never really know what you're going to get until the final budget goes. So that's why, sorry to say it, but it is a little bit of a crapshoot, but we've always sort of come out ahead in the end because it's a statewide issue. It's not a party issue. So that's why you have to plan for maybe less, but we've typically always gotten more. So I just wanted to explain that. And yes, it is population based in many, for the most part.
Thank you, Kathy. So onto the room tax income, and I just want to preface this real quick before we get going. A few council meetings ago, Dave Olney spoke up and wanted to let us know that he was seeing a decline in bookings, and not just in Gustavus, but in general. And he warned us not to budget too high for the room tax income. And so separate from us, the GVA chose to put together a survey asking businesses around the community if they were seeing a decline in their bookings. And that went out to some of the smaller places that are just doing Airbnbs, and to the larger places like Glacier Bay Lodge. And we did not get a negative response. We got a positive response that bookings were either as good or better than the bookings had been in the previous year. So when we put this together, we went ahead. Last year, they budgeted $90,000. We budgeted $100,000, and that was based on the fact that we're at $100,000, over $100,000 so far this fiscal year. And again, we'll still be receiving room tax income for this quarter, not so much, but for the next quarter, definitely. And so we felt comfortable with raising that a little bit. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments before we move on, but that was one of the ones that I thought might worry people based on the comments, but we felt comfortable with raising it.
Yeah, I might add that, yes, bookings are strong, apparently similar to last year or better. And my guess is that with inflation, the room costs are going up too, which means our sales tax will increase just due to inflation there. So I think we've got a pretty safe bet here that we'd be collecting this much.
Yeah, so can I actually just ask for a point of clarification on the room tax? Is that a flat rate per room night, or is that a percent of the cost of the room? How do we calculate that? I wanted to take some time and look into the rules of it. but
It's a
figured I might-
percentage.
That's a percentage.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Great. Then yeah, I think that 4%.
4%, and there's no sales tax on top of that. So if there being any bill that's being to which is applied the room tax is not also applied sales tax. But if their meals and so forth, at their restaurant or their boat tickets or whatever would be sales tax only.
Okay,
And
great.
that's 3%.
Percentage. Love it. Much better
Shelley?
than flat.
Yeah.
And also to clarify, but there's a maximum limit, like the longer stays aren't taxed. Is that 30 days?
Yes.
Yes, if somebody's renting a house or something for the summer, they don't pay room tax on it.
Okay. The fish box tax is based on we sell to the inns and the fishermen. We sell fish box stickers when you send a box of fish home after your vacation. You put one of our stickers on it. Those boxes cost $10 to leave Gustavus. This year we made $8,520. So 852 boxes of fish left Gustavus and were accounted for properly. They had budgeted 7,500, which was probably a nice conservative number. We raised it to 8,000 based on this fiscal year's numbers, still coming in under the amount that we received. And we again just didn't see any reason not to raise that a little bit. Last year, it seems here, they budgeted for penalties and interest. That would be penalties and interest based on people not paying their sales tax or turning in their sales tax on time. That's all it would be based on that. I didn't put in any number there. I don't know how you guess that people might not pay their sales tax on time. They budgeted $4,000. We're at $1,971 so far. We wanted to, we could probably put a number in there, but we didn't need that number to balance the budget. So I did not put a number in there. I'm sure that we will make some money off of it. but let's hope not.
Usually, a lot of those cases are an accounting error on the part of a lodge, or they just forget to do it. And generally, they're all really good about, paying their late fee and so.
They are, and it's one of those things, we're not, well, I don't know. I like to think we're not all other communities. If you get your sales tax to us a day or two late, but but the amount's right and you didn't take the 2% discount for getting it to us on time, then we're not going to come after you for the $26. But if you're turning in your sales tax 2 or 3 months late, then that's what most of those fees are. People who, we're trying to encourage them to turn it in on time so that we can get it into our bank account and use it for our community. So it is what it is. Tax exempt cards are $10 each. That's 30 cards over the last 5 years. 30 tax exempt cards seem to be appropriate. So that's what I put in. Currently for the fiscal year, we're at $200. And this is the time when people are registering their businesses for the new fiscal or for the new calendar year. So we'll see that number rise for this current fiscal year as well as for the fiscal year that we're talking about tonight. So there, I will say here, where I didn't do all the totals previously, that the total here for tax income, which includes the fish box tax, the tax exempt cards, the room tax, the remote sellers tax, and the retail tax, that number is $579,300. So if anybody that's listening and is not able to follow along, that is the amount of money that the city of Gustavus expects to generate off of taxes, separate from the small pools of money coming in from the departments and separate from state and federal revenue. Does anybody have any questions before we move into expenses? Yes, Shelley?
In the previous iteration of this document, it listed that as sales tax income, and then the word sales was dropped. Is that? I was wondering why.
Well, I don't know, because I'm just using the words that are on the report.
Okay.
So if you're talking about an Excel spreadsheet that I sent to you and it has a different thing, it's just that somebody wrote it in however when they made it up, they said sales tax. Whereas it's really the total tax. It's not just the sales tax, it's all of them.
If I could, a quick question. This is again, more of a curiosity than anything, but the tax exempt cards, I'm wondering a little bit more about that. Are these
Okay.
businesses that don't have to
Yes.
pay tax?
No. So if you have a be stupid to say it like this, but if you have a widget store and you that's not a good way to say it. If you're a contractor and you're going to go to Toshco and you're going to buy $100 worth of plywood and then you're going to go sell it to your customer, you would get a tax exempt card so that you didn't pay sales tax to Toshco, but then you charge the tax for the product that you sold to your customer. So it's not being taxed twice. It's only being taxed at the end user, the customer who's paying the contractor who's going to give it to us. So people who, another one would be like, say, Annie Mae, they sell food. So they go to the store and they buy bread from Toshco. They don't pay tax on that bread at Toshco. They sell the bread to the customer. When they sell them the sandwich, they tax the customer, then they remit the tax to us. So.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Understood.
Great.
That makes sense.
And Ben, you might highlight that total income line under admin with federal and state in it. We've got 874,387. But when we add income from DRC, GVFD, lands, library, and marine facilities, we come up to $1,057,037 or $37.92 projected income for the next year.
Yes.
So over $1 million in income.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Yes. Okay, so here's where it's a little trickier. The first line in the expense column is administrative costs. That is the $35,000 that Mike alluded to in his, before he turned it over to me. If the community has an option of doing a certified financial statement or getting an audit. And if you don't have to have an audit, there isn't any reason to pay for one. So typically the city of Gustavus will create a certified financial statement, and we'll use that to apply for funding or to get, our money, our state revenue, et cetera. But there's a limit in federal funds that you can receive of $750,000 in a fiscal year before you are required to do an audit. And so this fiscal year, we have exceeded that amount. So whereas we thought we might do an audit this current fiscal year, we weren't required to, we didn't. And now in the upcoming fiscal year, we will have to. So we just went ahead and took that $35,000, which we weren't touching this fiscal year, moved it forward to next fiscal year to cover the audit. We don't know exactly how much that's going to be, but we're estimating that it's going to be approximately $35,000.
And that's what's called a federal single audit is the level of audit. There are lower levels, but that's a pretty substantial audit that's required if you have $750,000 or more in federal funds received.
And we're required to do it, but it was something that Phoebe Vanzelo suggested that we consider doing prior to us being required doing it. And then when I came on to replace Eduarda, I thought that it would be a good idea. Also, it's always nice to come in and know that you're already doing it right rather than to continue doing it wrong and then find out later. So we had planned to do it anyways. Now we have to. So that's what that $35,000 is. Advertising $100. I don't.
RFQs or things like that we might advertise.
Sure, things that we might have
job opening.
Yes, job openings, things that we might have to put in the paper. That's based on previous year's budgets, and so we just moved that $100 into that line item. I'm sorry, it says bad debt there. I'm not gonna, well, I guess I'm gonna change it real quick. That should actually be in the bank service charges. That's the $25 so that Sol can have a credit card. Other departments you'll see also have that same $25 amount.
So you'll just add that to service charges
Yeah, I'm just gonna move it
and
there and
get
take
rid of that line.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll collect all of our debts and
Yes,
we don't have any bad
well, and
to write off.
yeah, $25, that'd be kind of silly, but anyways, you can see the bank service charges. Sorry, glasses back on. The admin is 3,100, DRC has 1,600, and then the library and the fire department have 25. The difference is that the City Hall and the landfill both have credit card machines. And so credit card machines, you pay for the use of the machine, you pay the 3% on each sale. And there are some other fees involved as well. And so having a credit card machine isn't free. And that's why those amounts are more than the 25 for the other departments. The building insurance, and I'll say this now for all insurance, but I'll probably say it each time that insurance comes up. Susan Erickson with Petersburg Wrangell Insurance said it was safe to raise our prior year's insurance estimates 15%. So that's what I did across the board on all insurance categories. that is one of the things that you pay in advance and then they reimburse you. No, they refund you if you've overpaid. So I budgeted that much. That's how much we'll end up paying. We may get some of that back, but that was based on our insurance provider's estimate. Okay, maintenance and repair, each department has a different amount there. The $1,200 and Paul may have read this wrong, I'm not sure. And it may matter and it may not if council members are curious, but the $1,200 for the DRC, I believe is for a new door at the community chest. The 301 building is going to need a new door. We didn't know how much a new door would cost. The doors that we put in this year at the city hall, and I think we put one in at the community chest, and also one went in last year at the fire department. Those were all bought with COVID money, and so I'm not 100% sure how much they cost. And the installation was done by different people, so it costs different, but I believe that's what the DRC's is. The to be honest, I just can't remember off the top of my head what each department needed those exact amounts for, but that's based on maintenance and repair of their buildings, not equipment or anything else.
And it's the estimates of the department heads.
Yes,
for
and
their own departments based on their experience.
That's correct. All of these, once we get in, now that we're into the expense categories, all of these expenses were submitted to me by the department heads. Some of them we negotiated over to try to get them down. But all these are the estimates of the department heads based on their experience in their departments. So if anybody has any questions about those, I'll let the department heads answer if they need to, and I'll try to answer if I can.
If I could just chime in here, I'm a little bit behind. I'm one line item behind, but looking at, lost it now, the insurance amount that you've budgeted for here in 2024, coming out to 12,658 and 62 cents. And then if you look to the fiscal year 23 budget to date, we're currently sitting at 12,789. So does that map with the 15% increase that you're expecting, or should we plan for another 15% on top of what we've already paid this year?
So what I was told was to add 15% to the prior year's budget.
Okay.
And so it could be, and this again, being my first year back doing this, it could be that we haven't received yet all of the money that will be refunded to us that we paid in. So that's possible, but when we spoke, she didn't say to budget it on top of what you paid. She said 15% on top of what you budgeted for last year.
Perfect. Just want to make sure we had.
And I would assume that the number that they budgeted last year was given to them by Susan, either as an exact number or, the same thing she told me, 15% on top of, or whatever percent on top of what you did the previous year. So.
Okay, great.
Okay. So contractual services. Contractual services covers a wide range of things for the marine facilities contractual services, which I guess we should start with the city engineer. The city engineer is a new line item that you won't find in prior years' budgets. And what we've done is we have been using John Barry to help us manage projects. And so we put that $20,000 in to help cover the cost of his services or others, engineer services if we choose, I guess, separate from capital projects. So if John Barry is managing the bike shed project, then the money that he is making is coming out of the bike shed, the allocated money that we NCO'd for the bike shed. But there's other things going on, like right now we're working on the fire department repeater tower, things that don't necessarily have money allocated to them, and he's helping us with those things. If we end up doing an NCO to cover the cost of the project at the fire hall, any money that we've spent prior to that will then be taken from the expense category of city engineer and allocated to the project. Is that, did I say that
Yeah.
well enough for everybody to
I think
understand?
we're gonna try to the best we can to cover his contracted services on the capital allocation for that particular project. And so we're trying to build that into, the funding for each project, whether it's Good River Bridge repairs or whatever, some of our road projects. But there are some times where we have him doing some work for us, say, taking a look at our RFQ, our basic RFQ structure, and how we do that and redoing that. It might not be something that we can directly assign to any one project, so we could use this little sort of grab bag here to cover things that we can't assign otherwise to a specific project. But we are trying to assign his time wherever possible to the specific project that he works on. And I'll have to say, he's made a big difference so far. He can do things that drawings and things that I couldn't do before. He's a civil engineer, and so he's got the skills and qualifications to make a lot of judgments on things like the concrete base for the antenna tower for the fire department, that are beyond my skill level as a mechanical engineer. So I'm really pleased to have John available to help us move these projects forward at a much faster rate and a much more professional rate than we've been able to do before.
And if I might add, please, that he also, because he's local, and as things come up and we need permits and we need someone to go look at a project and we need someone who's familiar with the area to be providing these services, he's able to just simply mobilize and go and look at them and get them done. So it saves us probably a lot of money using other engineers in the long run. So yes, we would try to put them to projects whenever possible, but having that funding available in our budget without having to come for an NCO every single time is going to be really helpful to us.
Real quick, Shelley, before you do, one other thing that I'd like to say is that prior to having it separated out into city engineer, this money would have come out of contractual services. So by creating the new category city engineer, we can see how much this specific service is costing us rather than having to go back and dig through the city's contractual services to say, oh, well, it was this or it was that. So that's another idea with having this allocated fund. So go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah, well, I've got three. Will he also be available for road projects, the engineering on road projects?
Yes, we already are using him for
Okay.
several of them. Yeah.
And do we have a contract with him?
Yes.
Can the
We-
council review the contract?
Yeah, we have an agreement that the city administrator worked out with him. Sure, we'd be glad to share it with you.
Okay.
It's a professional services agreement. And
Yeah.
I can get that to you.
Yeah, actually, that'd be great. And if he could do that.
And is there an estimate on how much we expended last year on engineering services?
Well, we didn't have, we're using John primarily as a project manager. So he's
Mhm.
managing the projects, but in some cases, he's actually applying engineering skills and doing engineering drawings and things for us. So we didn't actually do this same thing last year. Most of the project management was, mostly I did it. And so we are using him for special projects. Well, the bike shed for the library was an example. And so I turn over the project management to him and maybe I get it started and then turn over to him. Some projects I'll continue to do that are fairly routine, like turnarounds for the road system, some of the cul-de-sacs, some of the ditching projects and so forth, I may do. So I do, so we don't have to pay for his services. But I'll use him for the things where we get the greatest value out of his expertise.
Okay, thank you.
Just comment here. I think that breaking this out into its own line item, just so that we can have better visibility into what it's costing us. And I think come this time next year, so we can, say this is what we planned for and this is what we actually spent. I think that's a great idea. So fully support that.
And just, before, well, no, I guess I'll wait. So after city engineer, we have ambulance billing expense, that $1,300. We have a contract with a company called Systems Design West. They do our ambulance billing. There's quite a bit involved with ambulance billing that involves insurance companies and et cetera, things that the city doesn't necessarily want to have to take on that responsibility. So we pay $1,300 to Systems Design West. They do all our billing. They make sure that we get our money. And so that's what that is. Okay. And so contractual services, other, this is for the different departments. Each department could explain it. I wish I actually had my notes here. I could explain each of the DRCs. I know that it's the testing the well, I believe wood chips, cover soil. There's one more. Either way, it's all the stuff that makes testing the compost, the compost, getting the compost tested. The marine facilities, which has the largest number there, the 15,000, that is moving the floats back and forth. Moving the wooden floats cost much less than moving the steel float. Did cost much less moving the steel float prior to this year. This year, instead of having to move it over to Bull Moose Cove with a seine skiff coming from out of town and charging us what DOT had previously paid them, not giving us an option, that was costing us quite a bit. And this year we were able to get Fairweather Construction and Brian Todd to help us move the steel float into the river. And so the 15,000 covers moving the floats both directions. And I believe that we're going to try to clean up a few of the larger junk boats that I wasn't able to get rid of over the past few years. And so that's why the marine facilities is higher than the rest. But the other thing I wanted to point out here was that the bottom line here, can't see it that well. I believe it's $58,860. Last year, that's with the civil engineer. Last year, they budgeted $108,000. So that number's come down significantly. A lot of that is that they were budgeting extremely high for the marine facilities because we had no idea what we were going to be charged when it came to moving the steel float. And if the seine skiff didn't choose to come back over, we could get stuck having Tricano or somebody coming from Juneau. And that was the estimate that they gave us a few years ago was, I believe it was like $1,200 to do the job and $28,000 to come over here. So, so that number came way down from last year.
And what was the 10,000 for the admin contractual services?
Maybe I can give you, I mean, we use, I think, for a lot of little building repairs and various things.
And there's
that.
the IT contractor.
Oh, that's right.
I'm not 100% sure if that's, well, yeah, no, that's managed IT services. So that's not in the other. That's that 27, it was 27,450. There. I think it must be further down. But I can, again, that's another thing that I can show you what we've spent this year or what we spent in prior years on contractual services.
Nature of the expense and.
Right.
No extra work. for
Okay.
you.
Yeah, looking through, I don't know that the managed IT services is in this, at least the most recent PDF that you sent over. I don't think it made it in. So
Well,
if we're-
we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and
Because
that's-
that is something that we are going to be paying for.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mostly, if we're not gonna come across it in another line item, I'm curious to just get a better insight into what that is.
I can definitely give you a exact number. We have a contract with them, and so we pay them the same thing every time. I'm sorry, Shelley, are you talking to me or are you talking to Karen? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, if we don't find that, Brian,
Yeah.
tonight, we'll, because we will be adding that in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's one that disappeared because we're not
Yeah.
gonna have to pay it.
No. Dues and fees. Dues and fees are kind of all over the place, and the different departments have different things. The fire department has the Alaska Firefighters Association. The library has the Alaska Library Association. The city hall, we have quite a few AML fees and some of the products that we use. The library currently has subscriptions going to dues and fees. Again, that'd be something that if we wanted to break all that out, I would have the department heads maybe explain those numbers a little better. I don't have all of that information sitting here in front of me. If anybody has any questions, though, I'm sure somebody can answer it.
This is just going on the document that is from it says Department FY24 Admin Lands General Roads Budget. It has a line item for the IT contractor at $31,200.
Okay, then that's what it is. Whatever is in that is the actual amount. I'm not sure why it's not in here. I hope I didn't miss it. If so, then we'll have to come up with another $30,000, but I'm sure that we'll be able to. I'm not concerned about it. Thank you, Janine. Okay. So the Economic Development Services, the GVA, each year the GVA submits a budget to the city and requests funds. This year they requested $36,000. We have a policy in place that the GVA can request up to half of the room. That money all comes from the room tax, income, and they can request up to half of that. This year they requested $36,000. They explained when they did their budget presentation what they plan to use that money for. I don't know that it was all for the movie, but a lot of it was for the movie they wanted to have made to promote Gustavus.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little
Okay.
bit if anyone is interested. I think the movie we're looking at between 15 to 25,000, but some of that they're going to roll from last year's budget into this year's budget. So not all of this money is going to go towards that. A lot of it, or some of it, the additional money they're working on getting some postcards printed of local artists, also moving the sign from one side of the street to the other, so it's not with the fuel tanks behind it. And then the rest is probably, well, not the rest, but most of the rest is going to be just salaries for myself and let's see, Trisha Dawson is doing our social media right now. And then Leah is doing a lot of marketing coordinating as well as being the president, which she does on a volunteer basis. So, yeah, but yeah, you're right. Most of it is pretty much going to be bringing a film crew down for 1 week, and we're trying to get a lot of really useful media clips that will be long-lived and fit the current format du jour of like short form videos that are, quickly digestible and help us to build a better brand of what Gustavus is and what that feels like, because we don't really have a super clear narrative in our branding, at least. So hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I think GVA is doing a really good job, and especially in the last few years, they've matured tremendously. They are the advertising branch for the city for helping support our visitor industry, which is really what keeps pays the bills here. So I feel real comfortable in allocating the amount of money they ask for in this. I think they'll put it to good use, and I have a lot of confidence in Leah and her crew to essentially generate a strong return on this. And it really helps the other businesses too, because it's a sort of the one-stop shop to go to look at what all is available here in Gustavus. And they sort, from their website, you can sort visitors out to whatever lodge or service that they're interested in. And I think it's real important to fund them, and I feel good about it myself.
Could you turn your microphone off too, Jimmy, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so moving on, election expense, $250. It's pretty self-explanatory. We do get money back from the state or from, I don't know, maybe even the federal government for election expenses that we pay, but looks like this fiscal year we budgeted $250. We spent whatever. They paid us back 200, and I guess we spent 350. They paid us back 200, so it really only cost us $150.99. So 250 seemed like a reasonable amount. The emergency and disaster fund, that is the $50,000 that Mike alluded to in the beginning. That is just money that was allocated for this fiscal year in case we had a disaster. We have not had a disaster, and we are hoping to not have one. So we are just pushing that. We push the income forward, and we push the expense forward as well. Okay, equipment fuel, again, pretty self-explanatory. The landfill is the only one that has put in money for equipment fuel. There will be vehicle fuel later, equipment at the landfills, the Bobcats. Think anything else uses gas? And weed whacker. Okay, so a few other items, but that was given to us by the landfills, the amount of money that they thought they would need for equipment fuel. Equipment purchase, each department put in for the things that they thought they would need. Again, oh no, I can. So for the landfill, the 2850 was for new puncture-proof Bobcat tires for the plus shipping for one of the two Bobcats that they use to move things around at the landfill. Paul said the last time they replaced those was in 2016. He did say that if we didn't want to buy the puncture-proof tires, we could get cheaper tires, but with cheaper tires, you just end up replacing them more often. So, and I did any time that, I guess this is a fine time to bring it up, but anytime that someone gave me the option of putting in their low number or their high number, I put in their high number. I thought it would be up to the council to decide whether or not we wanted to accept that cost, and it wasn't up to me. So what you're seeing, if these numbers are estimates, is the high estimates. For the fire department, so the $4,000 there, 2,100 of that was our match for a new Lucas device that Sol would like to get. That's the breathing apparatus that they use to chest compressions. Yep. And then there was a stethoscope and one other item. I don't remember what the. So again, it's a matching amount for radios. The library, $500 for equipment purchase. I can't remember off the top of my head. Jesse would know if she wants to chime in.
We decided on $500 to replace small items that tend to wear out or break. Scanners is one thing that we tend to go through. Computer mice, things like that. It's mostly just small stuff.
Okay. The marine facilities, I went with $100 because that's what they had been putting in for the previous years. I have found that I always needed things, but I always found a way to get them, whether it was through my supplies budget, which I did put in. I think I put in a reasonable amount for supplies. No real equipment like Bobcat tires or Lucas devices. So I thought $100 was fine for that. And the $2,500 for admin, be quite honest with you, I don't remember.
Maybe Kathy could.
Kathy,
have an idea.
was there something specific that we put that in for?
I'm sorry, for where?
For the equipment purchase for admin.
I know we were looking at, let's see. That was equipment or that was maintenance and repair?
No, it was equipment purchase. And I might have just based it on the previous year's estimates or budgeted
mean,
amounts or.
I'm more familiar with all the different maintenance items for the different departments because of stuff we know that needed to be done, but I don't believe, I think you moved that forward because of perhaps something from the year before.
I think you're right. I think that was just a safe number for, things that we might need around here. Computers for the council, computers for the staff, items that.
And maybe even updating archaic acting workstations could also be a possibility.
For that. Yes. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks.
Okay. Insurance there. Again, that's equipment insurance, not any other kind of insurance. And I did the same formula, 15% on last year's. Maintenance and repair. The only department that has money in maintenance and repair for equipment is the landfill. One of the things that we have gained by adding Ian Barrier to our staff is we have a mechanic now. And so whereas things that before would have had to have been purchased, now we have someone who can work on them, and they have been using this year's fiscal year budget to acquire tools and the resources needed to do that repair work. And so based on the life of the equipment at the landfill, Ian and Paul thought that $6,000 was a good number to get their equipment maintained for the upcoming fiscal year. So there you have the total for the equipment. See that across the board. Obviously, the landfill has the most equipment, so they have the biggest number. Events and celebrations are different for each department. Events and celebrations for admin is for the entire staff, regular employees, as well as temporary employees and labor pool employees. interns or financial analysts or anyone else that we have on staff, we take the amount of hours that they work, we split that out, and then we offer gift cards for Christmas. This is something that I believe Mike started a few years ago, and so that's what that number is. That $3,800 is Christmas bonuses for the staff. The $250 for the landfill, that is for volunteer appreciation stuff like the community service. I mean, the community chest pizza dinner that Paul puts on for the volunteers that they all love. It's great to eat pizza with Paul, and it'll be great to eat pizza with Ian in the future. The library, the same thing. Their $350 is for volunteer appreciation type purchases. So freight and shipping is obvious. The one question that folks might have is, why does the landfill spend almost $29,000 on freight? And that is shipping the recyclable materials out of Gustavus. And like I said earlier, when I was talking about the recyclable material sales, the price of fuel is going up. Everything's going up. So I believe we increased that a little bit from last year's. Definitely we increased that from last year. So I believe that Paul gave us a good sound number, and so that's why that is that. The library, also they do 1,000. That I believe is interlibrary loans. I see it as library mail when I get it, but yes, Leanne is saying that is interlibrary loans. So that's us shipping books around the state to patrons who can't make it to Gustavus to check out their books. Fundraising expenses, the only department that has anything. Yes, yep. Oh. I see. So for anyone who couldn't hear that, that's not for shipping books out of Gustavus. That's for shipping books to Gustavus. And once we've read the book, then we mail it back. Okay. So the fundraising expenses, the only department that has anything there is the library. The library has is almost out of the t-shirts that Kathy Hawker designed and the library's been selling. They would like to purchase more of those. And that might not be their only expense, but I'm sure that's the bulk of it. And so that's what that $500 is. General liability, again, insurance, 15%. The gravel pit fund, every year for the last 3 years, the city has taken $6,000 from its revenue and put it away into the gravel pit fund. And this money will be used later on down the road for, buying dredging equipment or whatever the thing might be that we need to continue to use our gravel pits, because without gravel in Gustavus, the price of construction and everything else goes up. And so a few years ago, they decided to start putting money away for it. And that is. Library materials, nonfiction ad replacement. That's books, maybe DVDs too. Yep, books, DVDs, things of that nature. Marine facilities, insurance, again, the same. Maintenance and repairs. Yes, sorry. Mike has something.
Maybe we got to raise the issue of the PLA grant here.
Okay.
The library, some of their materials, as I understand it, they can and do buy on the PLA grant every year.
The Public Library
Public
Assistance
Library
Grant.
Association or something. I don't know
Assistance.
what. At any rate, it's a grant that our librarians qualify us for every year and apply for. And it's a major means that they can buy books and DVDs and other materials, or that they loan out, to patrons. There, there are some things, if I understand right, that we can't purchase on on a PLA grant, that are still materials that that our patrons are interested in and that you need to buy. So that's the 2,000 goes for that sort of thing. Am I correct? And now, one thing that I would like to do, and I've asked Ben to try to figure out exactly how we do this, is where we have a standard grant like this every year, and I think it's usually the same amount, that that we treat it as income, and then what we buy, and then we buy against that grant on an expense line. So I've asked Ben to work up a way, and there are some other grants that we may need to handle this way too. We've had grants purchases often over the years, sort of, they don't show up on the books exactly. So it's money, public money that we're spending, money that we're receiving in income and that we're spending, that doesn't show up on our on this book. So I would like that to appear in our budget. And I first raised this when I was mayor before, several years ago. And at that time, we went to, I think it was Phoebe's recommendation that we do a separate spreadsheet for that, just to track those things. But that spreadsheet doesn't show up in the budget. And so I would like to work those to the extent possible so that they actually show up in the budget. Now, it's not necessarily straightforward, because sometimes you may not know how much you're going to get in that grant, and how much you're going to be able to spend. And so theoretically, my approach would be to, if we think we're going to get 7,000 in a grant like the PLA, we would budget 7,000 in income for that. And then we would budget 7,000 in expenses against that. So it's a wash in that respect. But if we only got 5,000, then it would be up to the department heads to monitor that their purchases were within within the actual money that was provided under that grant. So so in a way, it's like a lot of other money that we get in from various other sources. And we charge against those, just like taxes in general. We don't know how much we're really going to get, and we have expenses that we are going to apply towards that income. So this is similar, but I think it would improve the transparency. But it's probably going to take a little bit of work for Ben to figure out how to do this. Some grants may not be that straightforward, so we're going to spend some time and try to figure out what we can do. I would like those things to show in the budget.
So Mike and I haven't we talked about this a little bit before the meeting tonight, but we haven't had a chance to sit down and talk about it. Since incorporation, the city has not included grants in its budget. I'm not 100% sure why that initially was the case. I've asked our previous treasurer, and the best answer I can give to why we're still not doing it is because of our accounting software. It's easy with QuickBooks to track things one way or another way, but it's not as easy to put those two things together. And so by putting it into the budget, it makes it harder to track. Whereas right now I could just go and say, this is how much money we got the PLA grant. This is how much we've spent. Might not be so straightforward, but I am willing to try. Mike's the mayor and Kathy is the city administrator. And so I'm going to look into it. It does complicate things because we're talking about the PLA grant, and then there's the OWL grant, but then there are other grants. And if we're going to be doing it with all grants don't always come prior to June 30th. So if we get a grant that we did not put in the budget on August 1st, do we then need to do an NCO to NCO that money into the budget? That could complicate things as well, but we'll sit down and see what we can do. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't put it in tonight.
Yeah.
When I came in, I didn't immediately put it in so that you guys could see it, but basically with the PLA grant, if it's $7,000, you have to spend that $7,000, and any money that you don't spend, you have to send back. So just in that case, and again, I'm willing to try, but just in that particular case, if that would mean doing an NCO to send back the money, you know, so it's another 2-month process, but we will work on that going forward.
Figure that- And by the way, we wouldn't do that for construction grants, capital projects, you know, like a bridge or something like that, a building. Because we account for those grants and the expenses and everything in the capital budget. So this would just be for grants that are for items that we use in essentially in the operating budget, and would be only for items for which there actually is money exchanged. If we have a grant where the granting agency just sends us some equipment, say for the fire department or something like that, and there isn't money exchanged, then we wouldn't have to include that.
Right,
Uh,
and there,
but-
and like I said, the OWL grant pays for part of the internet at the library. So again, that doesn't necessarily get seen, but so maybe it should be in the budget. It's one of those things that, you know, because we haven't been doing it, I haven't considered it. Today we started talking about it, and if we can do it, then
So
that's what we'll
Yeah,
do.
we'll just do some work on it and see if we can make it work.
Okay,
City were not aware of what to run the library. You know, acknowledging that we do see that right,
Yeah.
which is what benefits our teacher. You know, we get funding for OWL for part of our internet, for the council and the mayor, you know, when you're reporting, it doesn't say.
I'll
Yeah,
I'll just repeat it if.
yeah.
Okay, so Leanne just basically said the same thing that I did, or the same thing that Mike and I did, that having the PLA grant in the budget will show the council how much it actually costs, not how much it costs minus the PLA grant. The same thing with the OWL grant. If that was in the budget, then you would see that the internet for the library actually costs twice as much as it looks like it costs because OWL pays for half of it. So that was Leanne's comment.
Thanks.
Okay, so where are we? Oh, marine facility. So insurance, again, the same, maintenance and repairs. The floats are in constant need of repair. They're not battered because they are maintained and repaired, but I don't know, you know, it's always another piece of pressure treated wood, or, you know, another box of screws or whatever. And so every time the boats bang into the bumper boards, they knock something off. So $3,000 is a good estimate of what it's going to cost to continue to maintain the marine facilities structures for the fiscal year coming up. Occupational health, the only department that currently has that line item is the landfill. That was put in by Paul for things like tetanus shots, so that if not things that would be covered by workman's comp injuries, but simple things that the landfill operators could do to protect themselves. He wanted to have an item there. And so we put that 500 in. And he did say when we originally talked about it, you could run up there and get yourself a tetanus shot if you wanted. So he wasn't being greedy with it, but he thought the 500 would cover the outdoor staff for things like that.
Yeah, there are some OSHA requirements for some things that we need to be covering a little more carefully or thoroughly than we have in the past. So
Right.
this provides us some funding to do that right.
Right. Okay, so payroll is a bit of a big one, and if nobody minds, I would like to skip over it in this portion of the budget and talk about it using the other worksheet once we get done with this portion of the budget. Everybody in agreement on that? Okay, so I'm going to scroll down. For now. Okay. I'll wait for it to catch up. Okay. So professional services, that is almost entirely for the city's lawyer. I haven't put anything extra in there. I have considered taking a little bit from last year. They budgeted 25,000 for professional services, and we've currently spent $4,600. So I'm sure that they budgeted high because they had plenty of extra revenue. So it was fine to do that. And you never know. You could end up needing your lawyer for more than you want. But Mike and I thought that it was safe to drop it down to 15,000. And so that's what we did for this year. Mike, do you want to say something?
All I did, I think last year we were concerned also about the same old road suit. That's all been covered by our insurance and is close to getting resolved. We haven't had any expenses to that because the lawyers charged to the insurance company rather than to us. So that was one of the reasons for having it higher. Years ago, we used to put in about 20,000 and we never spent anywhere near that. So, fortunately, so that does mainly go to our city attorney, though, Bob Blasco, in his office.
Yeah.
And we get excellent advice out of them. They're always very quick in responding. They give us good advice. I'm confident in accepting their advice and doing what they tell me to do.
Okay.
Question about professional services. I probably should have asked this if I'd thought of it during the contractual services, but for the grant, the people that look for grants for us, where do we find them in the budget?
So there's different places. Currently you would either find them in contractual services or you would find them in the specific capital projects. If they're working on a grant for the composting facility, then that's where it's getting allocated to, not out of the general fund.
Maybe Kathy would like to
Yeah, if I
comment
could
on that.
clarify that. So there was money already allocated for the composting facility, as there was some funds allocated for the new DRC building, most of which went to engineering. But as these grant opportunities arise, and many of them are very lengthy and complicated, but as we find out that we have a really good chance of perhaps receiving funding for some of these grants, we've been engaging Solstice to do these things. And so, yes, sometimes there's project funds available under capital, and other times we're having to use those services until such time as we get a project funded. So, it's all about trying to get the project funded. And if we're successful, then we can come back and look at setting up a capital project fund for them. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thanks for sharing. Always happy to have a little bit more insight into exactly how some of these line items move. It's definitely been difficult for me to wrap my head around sometimes, so I appreciate that.
I'm wondering if people would like about a 5-minute break. We've been going here for an hour and 40 minutes or more than that. So if you'd like a 5-minute break, let's take it, and we'll get back together at about 7:45. Okay, we'll reconvene here at 1:45 and Ben, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay. So public relations, we put in $500. Mike gave some examples of things that, that we might need that money for, but this year it just so happened that the health fair almost got canceled because there was a issue about bringing in people to staff the healthcare and renting a space for the health fair. I'm sorry, not healthcare, health fair. And in the end, it was $500 to bring in the search folks to staff it. And so that's
Actually, it's the Alaska Health Fair folks
Oh, okay.
that come in. And they are an NGO, actually. They're not even part of the state, but they operate, the Alaska Health Fair operates throughout the state and provides medical practitioners to come and do the services that they do. So,
okay. So
and we have used, let's see, we're on the, what was this line item again?
public relations.
Public relations. We've actually used that line item for situations where we wanted to do something for the community and we didn't have an actual budget line for it or an authority to do it. So if we've used it, for a congratulatory banners purchase for the school sports team one year. And we've also made donations to families that have had some kind of an emergency where there's donations being collected. And so that's the kind of thing we mainly use that for. And 500 is sometimes enough, sometimes not enough, but that's what we put in. Yeah.
Fair, is a discount on maybe our residents this year, if we end up going next year, it's gonna probably be $1,000.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we need another budget line here somewhere for supporting the health fair each year. I'm hoping that we'll be doing a much better job of it this year and in succeeding years. Sol's taken the leadership in organizing it. Since Search is not organizing it this year, Search did pay the rental fee on the community center for it. And then we're paying the $500 out of somewhere, I think,
Out of the public relations this year is how
Okay.
we're paying for it.
well, so do we still really have 500 left in that?
We have 1,000.
Oh, we had 1,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got enough. So, well, then do we need to have more in this budget line or do we need another budget line for health promotion or something like that?
I think that's a question for the council. I
Yeah.
can add a budget line if that's what the council chooses, or we can raise public relations to cover it if that's a budget line. If that's an acceptable place for it, it's up to you.
I guess if we had an actual line that said, with something like health promotion,
Okay.
then it would show up more specifically.
Okay.
And I think I would put in $1,000 for it, but I don't know what the rest of you think. We don't know exactly what we spend, but next year we're likely, if the city once again really has to be the organizer for the health fair and sponsors it, then it sounds like we're going to need at least 1,000. What do you guys think?
It sounds plenty prudent. It's hard to talk about adding or subtracting from the budget before we've kind of finished going through it. So I'm still trying to know whether or not that's something we have the leeway for and where that might come from. But I think that it totally seems more than prudent, especially given the conversations we've been having here recently around public health, to have a public health line item. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay, Kyle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think along the lines of what you were saying in the beginning, I think getting an overview and knowing, where we're at with everything and taking some time and looking at them individually. Not necessarily doing that in this session and making that change or recommending that change yet. I think looking at it as a whole after this meeting would be a better idea.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
you'll see at the bottom where we are on the.
Yeah.
On the balance. So, yeah.
yeah, so we can do it either way. I have it in my notes. And so I wouldn't be able to add it here anyways.
And by the way, I think I'd put it under the fire department
Okay.
as the best, since they have the EMS operation and the fire volunteers are involved often in helping do blood draws and blood pressure checks at the health fair. And if we're lucky, we can continue to twist Sol's arm to provide the leadership for it next year.
And I did threaten Sol with any more money for the healthcare our health fair was gonna come out of his budget. So that's
Okay,
and
thanks.
so for any council members who aren't in the building, and anyone else listening online, Sol said that this year the health fair folks did discount our fee because it was an unexpected expense. And that normally it would be $1,000, not $500. And so that's why Mike said he thought $1,000 would be appropriate and possibly more going forward. But we'll move on from public relations and we can talk about it.
Janine's
ahead,
got
Janine.
I guess in terms of a line for the health fair, it is like, then how does it get promoted, or how do we know, how does the community know when it is? And whether you have to sign up in advance or whether, last year's, I got told didn't happen because people didn't sign up in advance, but I don't know how we put out the word you were supposed to sign up in advance.
So I saw when I was in the post office this afternoon, I saw that Search has a flyer hanging in there. I didn't look to see if it was for the health fair, but in the past, that's what I've seen they had a flyer at Toshko, they had a flyer at the library, they had a flyer at the post office with a sign up sheet on it. I'm assuming that's what I saw today, but I didn't read it. And previously, I think that the city's involvement was less or none, other than the fire department volunteering at the thing. So if it turns out that it's becomes the city's responsibility, then we will treat it like we treat other like general meetings and everything else. We'll post it around town. We'll post it on the news group, on the website and everywhere else to let people know. I think that would be our responsibility there.
Okay.
Yeah, I could add that Sol's putting together a steering team, right, to work with him to promote the health fair. I've been working with him on it too, and we are hoping to draw other practitioners here that are interested in offering services. Search is going to be, I think, highlighting the services that they have both at the clinic here and in Juneau, so people are more aware of the backup services that they have. And in some cases, they're going to be bringing people to Gustavus on some regular basis, a podiatrist or a physical therapist or the like, to see people here, services that they don't have all the time at the new clinic. And they are planning to offer tours of the new clinic on the day of the health fair, which, if I recall, is about the 29th of April. Am I right on that? I think something like that. That's Sol can correct me here.
If that's Saturday, then yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Saturday. So late April. And we're hoping to get see if other services such as Aware may be interested in having table with information. Sol and his team are going to be working to develop as many services to come for that as possible and coming up with a plan to promote the health fair, make sure everybody's aware of it well in advance.
Okay.
Mike, I'd like to add a couple of things here. So this has been coordinated by and large by Search over, I don't know how many years, but it was. And the health fair was. And of course, it didn't happen during COVID, although in some of the larger cities, they actually had the health fair where you could just make an appointment and go into the office. And the primary use of services during a health fair is the blood draw, the cheap blood draws, the availability of the blood draws for the blood tests. And when Search decided to withdraw from this particular health fair, the concern was that a lot of people were depending on, you know, this event to be able to get all of their different blood tests and their chem panels and their vitamin D tests and all kinds of tests. So in order to keep it going, we were, you know, trying to resurrect the whole thing. And then, you know, it evolved from there. So for whatever reason Search had, of which there are a few, as I understand it, that they didn't wish to continue them sponsoring this. You know, does the community take it up? And if so, it's going to involve time and it's going to involve expenditures. And it is a worthwhile thing because there are a lot of people here who can't get out of the community to go and get these tests. I mean, the clinic can do them, but you have to have insurance. So it is a good service for the community to be doing. But I just wanted to provide a little history as to, you know, how this happened and the importance of not only other people having tables and things, you know, at the health fair, but the major draw to this thing has to do with the blood panels. So.
Right, thanks, Kathy. So we'll make the most of it this time around. Search just won't be providing the leadership for it, but they will participate. We asked them to be sure to participate in the health fair, but we agreed to do the footwork to organize it.
And I don't know if
And
Sol mentioned it or not, but it also, Sol, correct me if I'm wrong, but it gives our EMTs their hours that they need or their blood draws that they need to stay current with their certification.
That is correct. It does help our EMT2s get our sticks in because we do have to have a certain amount of IVs or what we blood draws, I guess it's sticks, we call it.
Yeah.
To keep certified each every other year.
Okay, well, we'll think about adding a budget line for that going forward.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so now we're at the repair and replacement fund. And the repair and replacement fund was started, I believe, by Phoebe. I could be wrong there, but I believe it was based on a recommendation to Phoebe to take a value of the city's assets. And the idea is that if something has a life of 10 years, then you put 10% per year away to replace it. And if it has a life of more than 10 years, you put a percentage away to keep it maintained. And so at the time, and perhaps up until Phoebe's retirement from the city, she was trying to keep track of the city's assets and the value of them, which the value of everything depreciates. And then it's a rather complicated process. And I have not had the opportunity to stop and sit down and reevaluate whether or not these numbers are accurately reflecting the amount of money we should be holding back for repair and replacement of our assets, but it is on my list. But they have not changed over the last 5 years. This is the amount for each department taken out to replace these things. And you can see that obviously the library, that includes the building and every computer, everything inside it, the fire department, the building, the equipment, landfill, the building, the equipment, the marine facilities, the float. Unfortunately, the float system that we have is one of our most expensive assets that the city owns, and it's also the one that spends the most time getting beat up all summer, well, all year actually, not just in the summer. So that's why that number is higher for marine facilities than some of the other departments. I think if think about it like that, it all makes sense. But that's the amount of money that we put away each year for those repairs or replacements.
Ben, let me
Okay.
expand one thing. I remember this is money, it shows as an expense because we charge it to as an expense item each year. But this money goes into savings, into an AMLIP account, where it accumulates. And if we have to replace a major asset, we can draw out of that account to do that. That's the idea.
Yes.
So it's not, we're not really spending this money. We're setting it, it's like the gravel pit fund, sort of. We're charging it to this year and setting it aside for future use. It's a prudent thing to do.
Yeah, I think when Phoebe did our walkthrough as new council members and kind of tried to give us an overview of the finances, she pulled out this like just absolute megalithic spreadsheet of all of the city's assets.
Yeah.
It's like 400 by 400 rows and columns. And it's definitely something that's super prudent to do. So I think that as much as we can, within the manpower and within our means, without just totally piling on the work on Ben, I think that this is something that we should at least, try and have for our major assets, a depreciation schedule and be thinking about what it's going to cost us to replace them so that, 10 years down the line, we don't need a new Bobcat at the DRC and then find out that we didn't save for it.
Yeah.
And especially with it being invested in the meantime, I mean, the AMLIP is pretty, it's not
Safe
aggressively invested, but it's going to grow. So
Yeah.
there's no reason to not do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and during the break, we were talking about the difference between capital projects and general fund budgets. The library currently is going to need to have their boiler replaced. We could budget money in here for that. We could make it a capital project, or we could take that money out of the AMLIP account, out of the library's repair and replace funds that they put away to do that, through an NCO. So it's just another pot of money. Mike was right. I'm sorry that I didn't clarify that is money that goes into savings. It's not money we're spending every year. It's money that we're putting away for the future. Okay. Road maintenance. Road maintenance in the past has been put as a single line item. Previous year, it was put as $150,000. We renegotiated our contract with our road maintenance contractor. And so that's why I broke the numbers out into snow plowing versus road maintenance other. That doesn't necessarily mean that one of those columns couldn't be used, or one of those lines couldn't be used for the other. Just means it accurately reflects how we budgeted it the previous year. Mike and I have been talking, and perhaps with Kathy as well, about how we will negotiate the contract for next year. And this might not be separated out 65, 85, but regardless, it's going to be 150,000 that we'll start with. That is general road maintenance. We do have other road maintenance projects that aren't general road maintenance that will be paying for separately as projects, like the Wilson Road drainage project or things like that. So this is basically, it is two numbers, but you could just think about it as $150,000 for general road maintenance over the course of the next fiscal year. That's what that 150,000 is. Stipends. That is actually something that Sol and I talked about a few different times in a few different ways. And I believe that the $6,000 is two things. Well, first of all, the stipend is for the volunteers. If you volunteer with the Gustavus Volunteer Fire Department, then we record every call that you participate in, whether it's as a dispatcher or a firefighter or EMS. And then we take half of the stipend halfway through the year and we allocate an amount to each person based on the amount of calls they participated in. And so 3,000 of the stipend is for that, $1,500 for the first half of the fiscal year and $1,500 for the other half. The other $3,000 is for gym memberships for the volunteer fire department. And so I believe that it currently is an amount based on a per person schedule, but I believe that Sol is trying to negotiate with the GCC to make it a set amount because everybody's not using it and the people who are using it aren't using it all the time. So he wanted to make it so that everyone could use it for this amount. Is that correct, Sol? Yes, Sol shaking his head. So that is what the other 3,000 there is. He did ask me at one point to raise that amount, but I believe that we agreed on this, or did you want that amount to be higher? Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's all right to say $3,000 is for, I thought we did say more, but it's actually perfectly fine. Because I know the GCC hasn't agreed to anything yet. And it's something that I just recently proposed and just got said that they're working on with the board. So yeah, no, I agree with Ben what he said, that this probably, even with if they don't agree to that, I think it'll still be covered what we're currently using now.
I did speak with Mike the other day about this a little bit. Last year they budgeted 10,000 for this, with the idea of it being 3,000 for the stipend and 7,000 for the gym memberships. If we had spent 7,000 on gym memberships, we wouldn't have been getting our money's worth this year based on the use of our volunteer firefighters. So again, in an attempt, I'd said, I think at the beginning, or at least I told the department heads, I didn't remember cutting anything, but I did maybe make a few adjustments, and I think that this was one of them. And so, you know, as one of the things that we do have going for us is we know, and I'll get to this in a minute, but we know that the amount of carryover from this fiscal year to next fiscal year is going to be more than the amount that we put down there at the bottom. So if we need more money to support our firefighters and get them in the gym, we will have more money for that. But in an attempt to balance the budget without guessing at how much money we're going to carry over, we did have to make some adjustments. And so that's what that is. Yes, I'm sorry, Kyle.
So has the 3,000 for just a flat rate, has that been pitched to GCC as an amount, or?
I did email Brittany and she said she'll propose it to the board. I'm not sure if she did already or not. I'm not sure when that was. Yeah, that was last week. So
Okay, and that's like, I mean, like far and wide to volunteers, or how does that determine? Because I mean, that could be a large thing.
I proposed as $3,000 as far as a flat rate fee yearly for just volunteer fire department to be able to use to go to the gym and well work out. It's instead of trying to get particular, individual costs, I guess.
It seems like it'd be easier for them to manage it that way anyway, too, that, the fire department pays a flat rate and then anybody that volunteers with GBFD.
Yeah, I can also give them access to my roster and team and stuff like that. And
Cool.
My concern is that it will be underutilized more than overutilized. I would like them to make the most of it. But I'm not worried that we're paying too little or I mean, sorry, that we're paying too much. I would like them to make more use of it.
Yeah, and this is something that we already are providing this for the volunteer firefighters, so they already have this service available. So theoretically, the GCC already has an idea about what the levels of usage are gonna be. Okay,
And I'll start proposing it to my volunteers again, say like, okay, is this actually gonna be used? If so, how many? And I can base number that way. Right now I propose at $3,000, just because I felt like that's gonna be the most likely accepted. But
Good starting point.
that's the starting point.
yeah, I mean, if any place in town to overpay, the GCC is not exactly the worst place to have excess money go.
Right, yeah, it is going to one of our important local NGOs, so I'm glad to be able to buy a service from them.
And when it starts to burn down, all of our firefighters will be in shape.
We hope so.
Okay, well,
And
Shelley,
healthy.
were you going to say something too, Shelley, or no?
Just thinking administratively, it might be easier, Brittany, if the fire department had a single lock-in code, an entry code, instead of, for all the individual, because that would create less paperwork for her if there was just one code.
Okay, so moving on to supplies. Donated and fundraised expense, there's $800 there. That, don't remember seeing it. That should be offset by donations. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm sorry, I don't have it sitting here in front of me. It should be offset by the donations in the income category. Again, that's for the library. The library brings in money through donations and fundraising, and that is the line item showing the money going back out. Tanya, it looks like you've raised your hand.
Yeah, I think we already just passed a fundraising expense for the library of 500, just right up there. So just curious how it's different.
I think that might have been income expected that the
Well,
library.
there's
was going
income. I
to-
think the income's 600. And then if you scroll up here, there's another expenses of fundraising, and it was 500, or 500, I think, and then now 800. So curious.
So the 500 was specifically for the t-shirts, Tanya? That was for fundraising. So it might be something where we need to change the title here, because we've got donated and we've got fundraised, and then we've got them together. But I believe that this should probably just be donated and not fundraised, to go with donated income, and the fundraised expenses should go with the fundraised income.
Yeah, that would make
And
more
Leanne
sense.
is behind me agreeing. So does that answer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so yep, so this is just things that are donated.
Yes, I believe so. And again, Jesse's online too. She could answer this if I'm not saying it right, but I believe that it's just to show there's a little bit of a problem with budgeting for donated and or fundraised money income, and expenses. And basically with the donated income and expense, they should probably be the same. If we have the Brian Waverly money is coming in, it's being donated for a specific purpose. The money that comes in all of it is going to go out for that specific purpose. So, it's in the past, they haven't always had it in the budget. And so I was asked to put it in the budget, and I'd have to scroll all the way through it, and it doesn't scroll so quick, but I believe that the donated income and the donated supplies donated expense should be similar, and the fundraised income and the fundraised expense should be similar.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Program supplies. This is grab and go kits. Other story time, the seed library, different programs that the library puts on for the community. All those things require supplies. And so we separate those out from what we consider. It says other here, but it doesn't say that when I'm logging it in. It just says library supplies or DRC supplies or whatever. And so that's the difference between those two items there. And you see that each department requires supplies. The bulk of the fire department's $7,500 there is for ambulance supplies. Marine facilities, again, like I said earlier, the marine facilities only gets $100 for equipment purchases. So that $2,200 will be for trash bags and toilet paper, cleaning supplies, screws, nails, wrenches, whatever marine facilities needs to keep our marine facilities going. Library, again, could be anything from mouse pads to cleaning supplies, whatever. DRC, same thing. I mean, those are all pretty basic. These are the amounts that we've spent in the past, so these are the amounts that we budgeted for now.
Hey, Ben. This is
Telecommunications.
Jessie.
Yes. I'm
It's sorry to
Go ahead,
interrupt.
Jessie.
I just realized something. So I was looking at that donated and fundraised amount of $800, and that amount came from the combination of fundraising and donations. And so when I looked at the fiscal year 22 amounts that we actually fundraised and donated, it was about $1,600. And so when I'd met with you, we had decided to split that 1,600 into 800 to go into our supply budget. And then the other 800 we talked about going into our materials budget, but I don't see that reflected on this budget. I'd missed that when we went through materials earlier.
Okay, so you're suggesting that we need to add $800 to library materials. Is it a separate line?
It's a
Go ahead.
separate line item, and that's just what we had. That's what we've been doing in the last two budgets that I've been a part of, taking that fundraising and donated money and putting it back into the budget through supplies and materials. But we're missing that other $800.
Okay, and so when a category is blank, QuickBooks does not necessarily add it, and so that's why we didn't see it when we went down through it. I'm assuming. I don't remember seeing a donated fundraised materials.
Yeah,
but
I don't.
I made myself a note here to add that back in, assuming that nobody here is objectionable to that, has an objection. Nobody does seem to be. Okay, so yes, so Jessie, nobody's shaking their head no, so I will add that back in.
Okay.
And when we have our next sit down, that'll be accurately reflected. Thank you for bringing that up, Tanya, and
Okay.
thank you for verifying that, Jessie.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, so telecommunications, obviously phone, internet, and the Zoom, the different things that we use to communicate. Training for most departments, training has gone up. The last few years, training and travel was down because of COVID. This year, we immediately ran into problems with that. And so you'll notice if you're looking at the comparisons, you'll notice that this year's training and travel is up across the board, but they reflect the department's current needs. The admin's training and travel includes sending new council members to AML, includes sending the city administrator to the winter and summer legislative conferences, includes, whatever Karen needs or whatever I might need to continue doing my job effectively. For the DRC, the $1,200, again, like I said earlier, Paul gave me different options for to put in as far as what might best serve the city as far as our new DRC manager goes in the next fiscal year. And $1,200 training and travel would pay for Ian to attend a 40-hour class in Anchorage, HAZWOPER class. That would cover everything. There were cheaper ways to do it, but I put in the most expensive, and in this particular situation, it would give him the better training than him doing a lesser online course. He can actually go up and be hands-on part of it. It includes him volunteering at the Anchorage landfill and getting to see how larger scale operations are run. And so that's what I'm putting them together, but that's what the $2,400 for the DRC was. The fire department still has some ideas for different things. There was the fire conference, and there was the firefighter one. There was some EMT. Yeah, Sol's going to come over and.
So as far as certain training, there's firefighter one, we currently only have one or two firefighter one certification level firefighters in town. I am not currently a firefighter one, so I'd like to get myself to at least firefighter one this next fiscal year. As well as EMT certified people are coming up to expiration date end of this year as well. And that requires money to hopefully bring somebody in to help recertify for another 2 years. And then there's a couple of conferences as well that I think we should think about sending myself or a volunteer to attend, one of which is the fire conference, which I attended last year. I think it's a beneficial program which generates connections as well as extra training, not just really just fire, but just also department running as well, running a department. There's also an EMS symposium up in Anchorage that happens every year. It's happened again this year. That is based all around EMS that I would love to attend as well. But again, that's upon approval of the grant. There are a couple of grants that one I know for sure we can get for the fire conference. It is a variable amount, so I'm not sure how much it would got. Last year it only covered basically the travel for both me and one I'll volunteer to go. Not sure if it's going to change this year, like that. But yeah.
Thank you, Sol. The library, the training and travel there is the Alaska Library Association Conference. This year it's in Fairbanks. I don't know if it happens in Fairbanks every year. No, so it's in different places, but this was basically what was going to cost this year. And so we budgeted for the same for next year. The $525 for the marine facilities, the city was gracious enough to pay for me to take an ETT course. And because of that, we were able to get a grant to buy a AED for the Marine Facilities Coordinator to carry around with them in their vehicle. In case something happened down on the dock, they could possibly keep somebody alive until the fire department showed up. And so I thought that we should put in the 525 to offer to whoever takes over that position to take the same training, to be able to offer the same level of service that we've been providing. Utilities are obvious. Fuel oil is going to go up. It's kind of hard to guess at, how cold a winter's going to be and what the price of fuel is going to be. So we just base that on prior years. Vehicle, same, pretty self-explanatory there. Obviously, the fire department has all the vehicles. So that's where you see the most.
If I can just chime in here, maybe I'm misunderstanding or not seeing something, but I've seen 7,900 budgeted for fuel oil. And then looking at the fiscal year 23 budget to date, I'm seeing that so far we've spent almost $12,000 on fuel oil and we've budgeted for 14.
Right.
Am I missing something?
So last year was extremely cold. Remember last winter? And so, yeah. So, but I mean, the library had to fill their tank every month last winter. And so that's quite a bit of money. They budgeted because of the previous year and last year, they budgeted $10,000. But then if you look at the way this winter's going, we're not experiencing that. So these were the numbers that the department heads gave me, and that's what we went with.
Gotcha. Is there a decrease planned for our fuel oil usage here since we're going to be installing a mini split?
There is,
I guess
but
does
it'll
that go to electricity?
exactly. It'll just offset. And again, we can't know. Maybe it'll be more expensive using electricity instead of fuel oil, but we can't know until we've tried it.
Should go down
Yeah, it should go down.
with the
And
new rates.
Yeah, and
Fingers crossed on that.
And I apologize that I started rushing. I noticed the time, and I do still want to go over the payroll before we run out of time. So
You want to hit the bottom.
that's
the-
right. Yeah, exactly. So I just wanted to say that the mileage reimbursement is just for marine facilities. That's the person driving their personal vehicle around. For the landfill operator, that's driving to the community chest to take away trash, etc. And then you see the prior cashier balance is what Mike described in the beginning, is the $100,000. That was $15,000 from professional services, $35,000 for the audit, and $50,000 for the disaster. And so all those things have been allocated, have been moved. The expenses have been moved as well as the income. And then if you just kind of follow everything to the right, you see that we have, so just go back up a little bit to total expense. We have $1,153,896.88. Which left us negative $96,858.96. Then we added in the 100,000, which we had already put the expense in from this year's cash, and that left us with a balance of $3,141.04. And so, given that, although I can see that we're going to have to make we're going to have to alter it some, that was how we were able to balance the budget prior to this meeting. And so I can see that I somehow did not include the IT contract. Going to have to get that in there. Again, I know that more money is going to come forward from this year to next year. I'm not worried about us being able to cover it, but we will try to cover it without assuming anything. So that'll be something that Mike and I and Kathy, when she returns, will have to work on prior to the city town hall in March. So unless anybody has any questions about all of that, I'd like to move over and bring up the payroll. and explain how we came up with the number that you may or may not have seen in the beginning.
Tanya Lewis has her hand up.
Tanya, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. That was a really, really good, thorough explanation of our income and expenses. I really appreciated that. And I just wanted to point out, this is my third round of budget, I guess, as a city council member. And each year we have done this where we were not able to completely balance the budget with the money from that very year. We brought money forward from previous years or savings or that sort of thing. And it always has worked out because we end up like making more money than we anticipate, or we get more money from various sources. But I just want to point out that, eventually we will need to, it seems like we will need to have our expenses equal our income. And, I'm definitely not worried about it or anything. I think there are other people in our community that are worried about it. But I just wanted to point that out, especially for new council members, that this is what we've been doing for the past few years and it's been working out. But it seems like it does make sense to me to move forward towards, balancing exactly our income and our expenses in a given year. However, we have a bunch of money in the bank, so I guess, it's fine. But I just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Okay. And thank you, Tanya. And I do want to make sure, I believe that I believe that you understand this, but the 100,000 prior year cash balance that we've pulled forward here is also equaled out by the expenses that we pulled forward. We here, we are assuming we're going to spend that $100,000, but we thought we were going to spend it last year. We haven't pulled any money out of savings. That 100,000 isn't from savings. It's from money that we budgeted previously. And I guess based on your comment, maybe we pulled that money from, maybe it's where we pulled that money from to cover the balance this fiscal year. Maybe that makes more sense. But yes, I do agree with what you're saying, though. I don't think that we should be using our savings to balance our budget. If we're doing that, that's not sustainable. And so that won't be my goal as the city treasurer. I will continue to try to limit the expenses, find more sources of revenue, and balance the budget that way.
Let me add something to that too. Okay. Remember, yes, our expenses don't equal our income. The income is always a lot more than our expenses at the end of the year. So every year we run a surplus, and that surplus builds our savings, and then we pull out of the savings to fund capital projects. And if you look at our total, the total savings, the amount of money we have in all of our accounts over the last several years, the total hasn't changed. In other words, we have not been net drawing our savings down. We're using savings to fund capital projects. And even by funding some significant capital projects, our total, the total net worth of the city, financial net worth of the city has stayed about the same. And we have 4.2 or 3 million in the bank. That's the sum total of the surpluses over what we have spent over all the years we've been a city. So continually we have added the savings account or added to that account year after year.
Yeah, I can just chime in and say, I appreciate Tanya giving her perspective and kind of some, just for me as a new council member, being able to kind of calibrate based off of your experience is helpful. And I do feel pretty confident with how a lot of these income line items have been pretty conservatively estimated for, as well as having used the higher end of every single expense line item is what it seems like. It seems like between those two parameters, this is a pretty, I mean, even if we needed to squeeze, you know, the extra, or what Sensible needed to squeeze the extra 31,200 or something for the IT contractor in here, I still think within the estimates that we've talked about on the different income aspects, we'll probably still have that wiggle room, even if we didn't, you know, without having to go and start slashing people's budgets dramatically.
Oh, and by the way, if prior year carryover is a standard budget line in a city budget, and it's one of the things, if you look at the training that we get from DCCED, and they have sort of a basic budgetary training thing in their council training course, and that's a line that is included as income for the year is carryover from the previous year, unexpended funds collected in the previous year.
And I guess I would just like to say that I completely agree with Tanya, and I think a lot of our reserves have been from the several $100,000 that we've gotten from federal funding the last couple of years that we're not going to be receiving in the future. So I appreciate Ben's remarks that we're not going to be taking out of savings to pay for. But also, I wanted to ask you, I guess I'm getting sleepy. Of the 100,000 in other income, there was audit, the audit, which we're not going to do, the disaster, $50,000, which is carried over. What was the third item?
The $15,000 for professional services.
Oh, professional services.
And I
15,000.
think we are going to do the audit. I think we're required to do the audit. So that is going to happen.
Yeah.
So where's that 100,000?
The 100,000 was, it's at the bottom. It's,
Yeah, I see it, but I mean, what are the sources of the other income?
They're money that was budgeted this year. So the money is already sitting in our pile of money to spend. We're not going to spend it because we don't have an audit, or we're not going to have an audit. We haven't had a disaster. We're assuming we're not going to have a disaster.
You're talking about FY23?
Yes.
Okay.
So
no,
we're just
okay,
pushing those expenses as well as the money forward.
okay.
And one more thing I would say on that, now I wish I hadn't changed my screen so quick, but not that it really matters, I guess. This year, I don't remember now, I'd have to go back and look at all the NCOs, but this year, the carryover was, let's say $57,000. I really can't remember. The money that we've pulled from that has covered the NCOs that we've done.
Mhm.
So, that when I took over, Phoebe said, that's kind of your bottom line right there. When they say, hey, let's do an NCO for this much, and let's do this and let's do that. She said, that's your number. After that, don't keep pulling, you know? And so even though we pull that money over, maybe to show up in the budget, it is balancing the budget, is covering NCOs, helping with capital projects, et cetera, you know, so it's money. I guess it's rather than putting it in savings, rather than continuing to build our savings account, which, you know, interest is doing that. It's just pulling that money from last year into this year to help cover the things that we know we're going to end up having. Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense? Mhm. And one thing, because I know that I've been hearing this now for years, that payroll should be, you know, should be this, should be that, should be covered by tax revenue, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the things that I was most concerned about with you know, how people were going to look at the budget as we put it together. And when I first put the budget together, it was without any raises, anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so great. You know, nobody's going to complain about this. And then I realized that, you know, there is the cost of living increase that, you know, is in the city has a resolution that said that, you know, it's something that the council would look at each year. And as the cost of living went up, the employees' salaries would go up to reflect the cost of living. So I offered the budget 3 different ways, the payroll budget 3 different ways to Mike and Kathy. And the way that Mike asked me to put it in here, just like with the rest of the items, I put in the most expensive version of payroll, which is with the 5.4 cost of living increase. And so you're not seeing the numbers side by side. You're seeing the end result if the community or the council decides to give the city employees a cost of living increase based on the Anchorage consumer price index. So every, not every wage here has been increased. The regular employees' wages have been increased to reflect that cost of living increase. With the wage increase, it increases the employer contribution and it increases the payroll taxes. So each little bit increases everything just a little bit more. But the numbers that you're seeing on the screen now, and I don't know how if we need to go through each one, but this is the breakdown. And I can tell you, we in 2021, I believe, Tom and Karen, it was fiscal year 22, but Tom and Karen talked about increasing her hours to reflect the actual hours that she was working in a year. City Hall changed. It went from being a 4-day-a-week operation to a 5-day-a-week operation. Her hours were not, it was by error, they were not increased in last year's budget. And so that's why her numbers jumped from last year to this year as far as the budget goes, is because not only is there a cost of living increase, there's also a significant amount, 5 more hours per week added to hers. When I negotiated my contract with the city, I said that I could do the job in less time than was previously being done based on the amount of time it took Phoebe to do it, but that I would want a little bit more per hour. So that's what you're seeing there for the treasurer. The DRC operator, if everybody doesn't know, Paul is going to be retiring this year and Ian is going to be taking over. So the operator, not only did that increase the hours, but it decreased the pay, but increased Ian's pay. So that is what you're seeing there. The assistants are based on, Paul had a really neat calendar. It's like, I don't even know what he did it on, a whiteboard or something, but he made himself a calendar and then he circled all the days that Ian would need to work and all the days that an additional person would need to work, and then the few days that they would need another person. So that's what the 1,008 and the 16 hours are. The 96 hours, kind of like Phoebe was the financial analyst to help with the treasurer as the new treasurer came on. Paul has agreed to give us 96 hours of his time to help Ian along with things. Obviously, Ian is not going to know everything that somebody will need to know to run the landfill. Maybe he will, but if not, Paul's offered to work those 96 hours to help us out. So that's what that is. Fire chief's salary, just like with the administrator's salary, an increase with the COLA, but nothing else really changed there as far as hours. The library administrators, the same thing. Last year, or this current fiscal year, the summer, they had a library assistant helping with cataloging. That position is going to go away in the new fiscal year, but they did ask for a summer intern. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure that either Leanne or Jesse could explain that. Jesse, we weren't sure what an intern would make, so I went and looked at what our last intern made. They made $13.50, so that's what we put in. Jesse thought it would be 10 hours a week for 10 weeks, and so that's the 100 hours. And the marine facilities coordinator, because we don't know what that's going to be, we raised the hours. To the top hours that person might work, we raised the salary to the top salary we are offering to a new person. And based on that person will have 6 months of probation, I put in half. of a year for contribution and insurance, which, oh, no, don't see it here on this, but it is in the actual budget. The amount is in there, and the insurance is one big increase that we did have this year. Last year we had nobody on the insurance, and this year we have 4 employees on the insurance. The city pays 80%, and the employee pays 20%. And so that's when you look in the group health plan, that's that 7,569.60. That's for myself and 3 other employees. Again, I did change it on here, was on the last one that I sent out. It did have half of a year, but the librarian who was on the group health plan will not be on the health plan. So I moved that money back to stipend. But as you can see, it's less than it was. The payroll's down 47,000 or 46,000 and plus from last year's payroll. So I was happy about that. And that's after giving every regular employee a COLA increase of 5.4%. So sorry that I ran through it quick, but I don't want to keep anybody here longer than we have to. And I thought you guys might have some questions. And Shelley does.
Nitpicking, I don't see either hours or, I'm assuming that Ian is salaried.
Nope, Ian will be the operator.
Oh, Ian's the operator.
Mhm.
Okay. And the DRC specialist.
That'll be
is a new
Paul, the
hire?
96 hours.
Oh, okay. And then I guess I'd like to ask Leanne or Jesse about the summer intern. What is the function of the summer intern?
Looks like Man's going to come over, Jesse.
The summer intern job traditionally has been support for the summer reading program. Someone to help with the activities, an extra set of hands to do the programming. It traditionally has been a young person, either just graduating or recently graduated, maybe early in college, to give them an opportunity to work in the community. We haven't had it, and with the smaller numbers, just because of COVID, it wasn't something we asked for the last 2 years. It's something that existed in previous to that, and there's just a lot of value to it.
Okay,
that-
you're anticipating an increase in children in the library during the summer?
We're hoping so.
Okay.
That's the goal. We've got some pretty exciting programming planned.
Mhm.
So that would be awesome. It's just nice to have a second set of hands, especially when you're working with small children.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Another question, if I could jump in here, just want to make sure that nothing's missing on this. You had said that there were 4 employees on the group health plan, and I don't know if I'm looking at a different.
No,
over-
you're correct. I corrected myself. There are currently 4 employees, but in April, one of the employees' husbands is going to get a full-time permanent job with the park, and they
Okay.
will no longer need ours. So
So are
I
we going down to 3?
So we're going down to 3, and I increased the stipend to reflect that. I took it out today, just today. That's why I apologize for saying 4 and then meaning 3, but I changed that around today. And obviously I didn't get it all in this document. I was more concerned about getting it in this document.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's great. I'm just happy to make sure that nothing's missing. And then I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around how everyone got a pay raise and the budget went down. Is most of that, I mean, the
No,
health
I can-
insurance stipend, and then I guess we're losing some money because Paul was higher paid as the DRC specialist, so that.
well, Paul wasn't the specialist. So Paul actually asked me to move it. The last thing I did before I walked out here tonight was I moved the DRC specialist from the top to the bottom because Paul didn't want it to be up there and look like he was in charge. He wanted to be on the bottom because Ian's going to be in charge.
Very good.
And so, but yes, Paul, obviously he was making, a higher wage at less hours, but that money will be completely going away. We had 2 COVID testers. That money, we're not planning on having COVID testers. We have our fire chief works in the fire department all day, and so he'll be there. We're hoping for less COVID, less testing, only needing one person. The obviously the summer intern, I can't remember now off the top of my head what the wage and the hours were for the library assistant, but the library assistant was another person. So right there, you have 4 people's salary who we won't be paying.
Yeah, and I now see that you have all of this so nicely laid out at the bottom of the document. I must be getting a little.
Oh, I'm
sleepy
sorry.
too.
Yes,
No,
I
no,
did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I just,
Yep.
I must be getting a little sleepy too, so I totally missed that. Thank you for walking through that with me, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
One last question, I promise this is my last.
Okay.
Is the COLA 5.4%?
That's what the last time we looked. I don't know that that's the end all number, but that was the,
We calculated each year based on the increase during the last calendar year of the Anchorage CPI.
Okay.
So that was how much inflation there was in the CPI during calendar year 22. So that's the figure that we use to adjust salaries upward for the next fiscal year. So actually, there's a little bit of a drag there. There's more inflation in that time, but that's how, but each year there's that same increase, that same sort of increase based on what the
Mhm.
calendar year increase was the previous year.
Yeah,
And-
I guess, I know we'll be talking about this with a resolution, but, I've been reading about from the Department of Labor Wage and Standards that, the CPI doesn't apply to rural communities. It's urban communities with good reason. So I think that, I think we'll be talking about, it seems like to me this is a reasonable inflationary rate for the COLA. But, basing it on the CPI, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, there, to be sure, that's true. And even the CPI, even for Anchorage, that's only one way of measuring inflation.
Mhm.
And there's producer price index increases. And so like if you listen to Marketplace, they'll mention those different things and you come up with different inflation rates. But the CPI is a standard thing that's used throughout the state, and the one that is generated is for Anchorage. So yes, we will have some things that are more expensive. They probably go up here more than they did in Anchorage, but there are also some things maybe that go up less. Right now, the Anchorage CPI is what we've got. So if you can think of a different formula for calculating what the price increases, what might be more appropriate for Gustavus, I'd love to have it. But that's sort of the best I can do at this point.
well, and also could I say that it historically I don't remember the year, but there was a year where the council made a resolution and said, based on this resolution, this is how we're going to calculate the wage increases for the staff going forward. And then at some point that resolution got repealed, or the policy that it was based on got repealed, but the resolution kept going forward. And so every year we've just continued to do this in error based on repealed policy. So Mike has spent time working on new policy and a new resolution. And so if you have more ideas, then I think that we should get all that in there too, try to get because, hopefully we're not having to refigure out how we come up with the wage increases every year. And one thing is that the CPI in Anchorage doesn't always increase. 2 years ago, it decreased and there were no wage increases. So, again, like Mike said, if you've got a better way of calculating it, then I too would be interested in finding out, because let's figure out the best way to reward our staff for the great work that they all do.
Yeah. But basically what we're trying to do, when we hire an employee, we negotiate with them and we come to some agreement where we think that we're paying this person, what that job is worth and versus, I mean, with regard to what that person can bring to it. They are also making a judgment that in doing that job, they're going to have enough money to meet their needs, their economic needs, in that, you know, by doing that job. And then, but then with inflation, we know that they are losing buying power. So the whole idea is to use a COLA, an adjustment, to try to keep them whole with inflation. And then when a job opens up, we start that process over again and we negotiate for that job again with the new person. And we don't do a COLA adjustment on top of that negotiation. We are at that point trying to make a judgment of what the market value of that job is and what the person's skills are with regard to the market. And so we start over again each time with that. But then again, we try to keep them whole year to year, so that they're not falling behind in their ability to meet the needs of their families and so forth. That's just kind of the way that we've been doing it.
Mike, if I could add something, if the council members
Sure.
are interested, there is the Alaska Municipal League has a compensation study that they get feedback from all the municipalities or some of the municipalities around the state. And so you could use that tool to compare similar positions if you wish. And there's also the Anchorage Economic Development Council. Bill Pop is their CEO, and he usually comes and does a forecast on wages and employment and unemployment and out migration and the reason for that happening in the state. And so there's a lot of factors to consider besides just the cost of living or the CPI. There's also trying to, I mean, you invest in training, you invest in employees, and those things are value added, and you want to not have to start that process all over again. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at this besides just the CPI.
And to add to what Kathy just said, we do have that,
AML salary survey.
the salary survey, and we know a few things about it without you going and looking into it yourself. And one is that it's not always accurate because Gustavus's information isn't necessarily accurate in it. And two, there's such a gap between, Treasurer in Juneau and Treasurer in Gustavus, or it's just not just the workload, but the cost of living in Juneau versus cost of living in Gustavus. So there's all kinds of things to figure in there. And I would assume that that's why back historically they picked COLA from Anchorage as their guide. I think that's probably where that came from. But we do have that survey here.
I have it too. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's on the AML website, and I can send it to anybody with as a PDF too. But yeah, you'll see some, wide variations in pay rates from, Shishmaref to Anchorage or whatever, for a single job title. But at least you have some idea. They give you the population of the community, and if you know a little bit about the community and where they are, you can make a judgment as to how that job in that community might compare to a similar title job here. And so you kind of have to look at a lot of factors, but in that survey, you've got good data that's real helpful to that. And so it's really worth taking a look at it to get a feeling for it. For example, we might say in setting a fire chief salary, we might look at a crew chief or a lieutenant or something in Juneau or Anchorage as a similar level of responsibility instead of at the fire chief job in Anchorage, which is a big job. And so that's kind of how we use the AML salary survey.
So just out of curiosity, kind of if we're speaking to our like best case scenario as to how we're trying to plan for salary increases in the future, that's ideally would be moving more towards like individualized assessments that also take into account something, Anchorage CPI, maybe not the perfect metric, but something that accounts for like maintaining their purchasing power, but then also considering like trainings and, the value that they're bringing. For example, maybe as Ian gets more into the role of operating the DRC, then we consider his training, his increased experience beyond just like, here's your 5.4%. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
and that's that's the kind of thinking in the resolution and policy and procedure that I have on the agenda for the work session coming up that you guys all have.
I don't think that was the COLA isn't across the board for all employees because of, the inflationary rate. That's different from the individual assessments. That's for wage increases. I just want to distinguish between those two. You got it?
I think
Yeah.
what you're saying is right.
I get it. I think we are agreeing, though.
Okay, well, great. Oh, nope, Kyle, got your finger on the button. Nope. Okay. So, unless anybody else has anything, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to keep us here for 30 more minutes with all of his good ideas. And so,
It's
No,
been
I-
fantastic, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kyle.
great job, Ben.
Details.
Thanks
Right on the
for,
mic. Thank you. Really good walkthrough.
thanks for taking us through this. I know Tanya and Jim Muskoviak have been online. Did we miss giving you guys an opportunity anywhere to say anything?
Not me, I'm
I
good.
just-
Thank you.
Okay. And I think Jim was finally able to find a Wi-Fi so he could participate too. So thanks, Jim, for tuning in. Okay, unless anybody else has anything else on the budget, then I think we're done. That was what the whole plan was here for tonight. Okay, thanks. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks to those of you who tuned in from the general public to make it through this 3 hours of tedium. So, good night, everybody. Oh. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And, rent and how do you